Fox News alert, a big day in Washington as a new and divided Congress is sworn in, with both parties still dug in over a government shutdown, which is now in its 13th day, just in case you're counting at home. This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Harris Faulkner, Lisa Booth, radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and joining us on the couch, the opinion editor for the Washington Times and Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt.
Yay.
Charlie, how you doing? Happy New Year to everybody. Yeah? You got some Red Sox going. Happy New Year to you.
Oh, look at those.
You're still celebrating Christmas.
Are those candy
these are
canes?
Christmas socks.
I think Charlie and Leslie
You know what?
coordinated.
We coordinated ties.
I like it when somebody hangs on to the season.
I can't let go of
Okay.
it.
Oh.
Right now we are watching here as folks are walking into the Senate floor. This as we are getting ready to see the swearing in of the 116th Congress.
Yeah, so they're walking into the House of Representatives there, and they are pretty much on time. This could take a while, you know, several hundred people.
Yeah.
But we'll be all over it. And as some of the names that we know are going to be considered that are big names, we'll take you there live, because it is, oh, look. They did it, Melissa. They put the picture up. I like to watch this happen. You know, I'm a C-SPAN girl.
Yes.
So I like stuff that's uninterrupted happening on Capitol Hill, because these are our elected officials, and they work for us.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so the House and the Senate are coming into session as President Trump, for the first time, will confront a divided Congress, and Nancy Pelosi expected to become Speaker for the second time. Both sides not budging after yesterday's summit at the White House, Democrats vowing to quickly introduce a measure aimed at, yeah, that's her right there in the pink. You can't miss her. They are aimed at ending the shutdown, a measure aimed at ending the shutdown, minus the $5 billion that the president wants for his border wall. The president was invited. He has invited congressional leaders to the White House tomorrow to plan and to try again. GOP leaders say the president is willing to make a deal, but the Democrats refuse to negotiate.
I think at the end of the day, the president, listening to him, he wants to solve this as well. That's why he's asked us to come back Friday after the leadership races.
The president and vice president stayed here over the Christmas holidays, and there was absolutely no negotiation from the other side. So they want to keep delaying and have a government shutdown while President Trump has said he wants to secure the border.
So much for fresh starts. But Democrats counter that the president has refused a fix that would reopen the government and deal with border security at a later date.
At our last meeting, the president said, I am going to shut the government down. They are now feeling the heat. It is not helping the president. It is not helping the Republicans to be the owners of this shutdown. Today, we gave them an opportunity to get out of that.
We're asking the president to open up government. We are giving him a Republican path to do that. Why would he not do it?
Indeed, Doug McElway has more from Capitol Hill. Doug.
Well, to answer Nancy Pelosi's questions, there's a very good reason that the president won't do it. He is fully aware that it is one of his biggest, if not arguably the biggest campaign promise that he made, and he's fully aware at the same time of the littered landscape of political carcasses of politicians who did not keep their promises like that. The president wants to keep that promise, and Democrats want to make him break it. That said, the White House believes it is the one party in this negotiation which has been compromising. That hasn't changed since before Christmas Eve, when Mike Pence came up here and offered Chuck Schumer a cut in the administration's request for border wall funding from over $5 billion to just over $2 billion. But Schumer said no deal then. There was evidence then, as there is today, that it was not Schumer, but rather Nancy Pelosi who was calling the Democrats shots, and here's why. She can only afford to lose 22 Democratic votes in her bid to become Speaker, which will happen in a little while from now. We believe she will lose anywhere from 16 to 17, perhaps fewer. But she doesn't want to take any chance of losing more by alienating the left, the new crop of Democratic socialists who may not vote for her for Speaker if she shows the slightest sign of compromising with the president on border wall funding. Instead, Democrats are offering a new deal to end the partial shutdown.
There's a way to end this, and the president can do it immediately. We offered to him yesterday to take the Republican-passed spending bills for 8 different federal agencies and departments and to enact them today. So that would be the end of the shutdown. We said no.
Mitch McConnell said no, too, reminding Democrats of just who controls the Senate.
Let me make it perfectly clear one more time.
As I've said consistently for the last 2 weeks, the Senate will not waste its time considering a Democratic bill which cannot pass this chamber and which the President will not sign.
There is some suggestion that Pelosi may be more amenable to some negotiation on border wall funding once she secures the speakership, which we expect to happen again any time this afternoon, and then secures her left flank. There's an alternative explanation or a theory at work here that she doesn't want to poison the water with the left flank by negotiating with the president in any respect regarding border wall funding. So we'll see how it all plays out, and it will play out this afternoon and in the days to come. Melissa, back to you.
And we will be watching. Doug McElway, thank you so much for that. I'm going to bring it on out to the couch. Charlie, I mean, this strikes me as one of the most intellectually dishonest arguments ever, because they're really, when you break it down, the two sides are kind of talking about the same thing. I mean, Mike Rounds was on earlier, and he was saying if we could come up with a euphemism that, you know, like meant wall, or it meant border security, because they're talking about the steel slats, they're talking about drones, they're talking about people. So if you could come up with some like word that Trump could point to and say that's wall, and Democrats could point to and say that's not wall, they could probably end the fight.
Yeah, and honestly, though, the biggest hang-up here isn't the fight over wall versus slats versus fence. The word that is the big hang-up here is Donald Trump, and that's why Nancy Pelosi cannot be seen negotiating with him, reaching some sort of deal with him. We've got a new Congress here. By the way, if you like chaotic politics, buckle up. These are going to be it's going to be a fun 2 years. And the fact that she's going to be resuming the chair here probably this week is a testament to her own wily intelligence behind the scenes in a place like the House of Representatives. But in years past, she's had opposition from conservatives in her party. Now she has opposition from both sides of her party, and mostly from liberals. And the liberal flank of the party, they will not abide her negotiating or making any kind of deal with Donald Trump, and that's going to hurt Democrats in the long run.
House Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen tweeting this about the meeting earlier. I am disappointed that Dems did not want to hear from DHS about the security and humanitarian crisis we are facing at the border. They didn't want to hear about criminal aliens, drug smugglers, smuggled and abused children, or violent caravans trying to breach the border wall. Harris.
You know, we watched that cabinet meeting, the Q&A section play out. We know that Secretary Nielsen took the floor in that meeting via video link inside the White House yesterday and had a lot to say. So this is really at the center of all of it. I mean, we can talk about partial government shutdown and who gets blamed and all of that, but this issue doesn't go away. There's still millions of people in this country who are here illegally. There's still the dreamers who are wondering what's going to happen. I mean, the really sad part about all of this is that these lawmakers in total don't seem to want to solve those problems. And what the president has done is put his foot on the gas and said, I really want you guys to do your job. I mean, that's what he's doing. And he will retain some public support, I think, throughout all of this. He might want to get those 6 appropriation bills passed, though, because that funds about 90% of the government, so it takes some of the ire. Jay, say that in my ear one more time.
We're watching right now as they're swearing in those senators, and they're going to do it 4 at a time, 4 more and 4 more. And this is as the 115th Congress goes out, and this is the 116th that's beginning their term, and they're swearing in. That's obviously Vice President Mike Pence, who is there performing part of the duty. And, you know, when you see something like this, Lisa, you hope for folks to work together. And to Harris's point, no one has solved the immigration breakdown. Everyone is to blame. The system is a mess. Why can't these people on both sides do their job?
Well, I think there's just a lot of disagreement. I think there's disagreement within the Republican Party how to get it done. I think there's disagreement in the Democrat Party of how to get it done. And so I think when you have your own party that's divided on the issue of immigration, how do you then come together and solve the problem? So I think that's the bigger issue here. And as we're watching the senators right now, part of what's going on right now with the deal making and figuring out how to keep the government open and the path forward is also leverage. And who is going to have the control over the next 2 years? And that's also why Republicans in the Senate and President Trump don't want to take a bad deal from Nancy Pelosi, because you don't want Nancy Pelosi and Democrats setting it up where they control the terms over the next 2 years.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point. we've seen a lot of women enter on both sides of the political aisle, the political process. And what you're watching right there is now Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. And I want to take a pause for just a second, because those women potentially can change some of the conversations that are going on Capitol Hill. We saw a shush fund that was set down last session, a bipartisan effort of women on the Hill to shut that down, women being paid to be quiet. That's what some of the money went to, with taxpayer money after having, hashtag Me Too moments on the Hill. And now you see more women stepping up and running for office. Marsha Blackburn now a senator. You've got Kyrsten Sinema coming in from Arizona. You've got Martha McSally, even though they went against each other, now both women. One of them appointed McSally coming in. So as we see some of those faces that we are familiar with, we'll kind of toggle back to that. Just wanted to point that out, Lise.
Leslie, let me ask you, it has been a failing on both sides of the aisle to get this done. And I think Charlie's right in the sense that there's so much politically at stake. You don't want to give Donald Trump a win. You don't want to be seen as, but the one thing we saw work was criminal justice reform. And it seems like some have suggested that maybe there could be a ruling by coalition rather than by party. Can you get coalitions together who want things and can kind of horse trade for that? Is there a possibility for that on immigration?
I'm not sure, but immigration, I think, is an area where Democrats can win, and let me tell you why. Even though you have a Republican majority in the House, in the Senate, even though you have legislation that would get to the president's desk and he wouldn't sign it, if Democrats can address, and it is a big item to address, comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah.
And when we talk about comprehensive immigration reform, remember, we're talking about DACA, the Dreamers. Yeah. We're talking about those, like Harris rightly mentioned, millions of people in this country who are in limbo legally. We're talking about security and border security. Right. And what does that look like going forward? We're also talking about on a state level, like the state I live in, California, sanctuary city and legislation. That legislation needs to be changed or rewritten. If the Democrats can work together, and I am confused by some of the division already, haven't we learned our lesson from 2016? When you look at some of the division already happening, when you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying, I'm not going to vote for this that Pelosi's putting out or that. And
she also thinks she can subpoena people.
Well, I think she thinks she can be Nancy Pelosi, and I'm sorry, but she needs to sit back. She's new, and watch maybe a little bit how it's done. I think immigration is an area where Democrats will shine if they can put forth something that is passed in the House, even if the Senate and the president reject it.
Can I ask you a question, Melissa, about the word and really press in the wall? Isn't it interesting that it works for both parties? Because Elizabeth Warren, we will not build your, and I'm quoting her, stupid wall. Right. Nancy Pelosi, no money for the wall. It's so interesting that that word actually works for both parties in terms of galvanizing its base.
And marketing, but at some point it has to be not about marketing and about actual government.
When is that going to be?
Well, I think we're all impacted by various parts of our immigration system having broken down. I mean, Charlie, one that we haven't talked about yet is the fact that we're almost out of workers in this country at this point, legal workers. You see the unemployment rate has dropped so low. We need agriculture workers. We need a day worker program. That's one of the elements that was missing from your mix that you were hinting at, is that there are just a lot of different things that need to be sorted out. Everybody wants it fixed. Maybe we disagree on the solutions.
But one of the things.
Okay, we were talking about the swearing-ins, excuse me. So I'm watching now that Senator Feinstein, and of course, Charlie, we watched her this summer with the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings as she brought forth.
There's Ted Cruz's beard.
And his new beard.
Yeah, and divulged the identity of a woman who had accusations against Kavanaugh and became kind of a symbol in that whole battle of what happens when people are thirsty for more evidence than what you're giving them. It was interesting, and now she's being sworn in. Chuck Schumer in that group too.
Yeah, but going back to the whole thing about immigration, one of the biggest problems that Democrats have is you have a number of people in the caucus who are talking about things, supporting sanctuary cities, or talking about abolishing ICE, which does not help the Democratic message of being serious about doing something about the border. The current thing that you hear from a lot of mainstream Democrats today is that there isn't a crisis on the border, and I think in the long run, Donald Trump wins that big picture argument. Even if you don't agree with his wall, you agree with the idea that there needs to be a solution to a real problem at the border that you can see images on TV every day that clearly points out that there's a problem. But earlier we were talking about this is a problem. Everyone deserves blame for this. Republicans have absolutely have just, or I would say a little bit less, but Republicans are to blame for the problem. Democrats are definitely to blame for the problem. And the reason that we're in these shocking times is that Donald Trump got elected running on this issue of immigration. And he did something that no other politician seems to do in recent times, and that is actually mean what he ran a campaign on. And he actually wants to do something to fix the problem. And there are all kinds of...
But does he want to do something to fulfill a campaign promise? Or does he want to do something to truly improve border security?
I think both.
Well, can we also just admit that both parties have supported a wall? In essence, both parties have supported a physical barrier along the southern border.
That is so cathartic.
And even the New York Times, yet the government is shut down over an issue that they essentially both support.
It's a word.
And
They're shut down over a word.
But exactly.
Not an actual concept.
Well, and the New York Times even admitted last year that this concept works. They admitted in San Diego, fencing there, that illegality there is 5% of what it once was. So clearly this works. Think about it. If you're walking someplace, there's a physical structure in front of you that you can't pass through. You're going to go someplace else, right? A physical structure works at the southern border. And the problem with trying to do a more comprehensive immigration reform, as you mentioned, Leslie, is border security and preventing further illegality is the preeminent issue, because the big thing is you need to incentivize individuals for wanting to make that journey and try to legally enter the United States. And if you don't address that, nothing else matters.
But it isn't the barrier that brings them or stops them. Like former Governor Rick Perry said in border state of Texas, they're going to go over it, they're going to go under it, they're going to go around it. One of the problems that we have in our state addressing agriculture, one of the problems we have in the state I live in, California, is you have corporations hiring these individuals. If you dangle the carrot of opportunity, they're going to come. And what we've seen over the past decade, is we've seen a reduction in border crossings. We've seen a reduction of people coming here illegally. And why? Because for a while the economy was going down. Those job opportunities weren't here. And that's what many of them are coming for if they're not fleeing violence in some of the areas.
That's absolutely true, and you're absolutely right about that. And the solution to that is E-Verify, where if you do have to address the behavior by the corporations is the way to do it. And that is finding people who are hiring illegal aliens. Go ahead, Harris.
All right, so we're going to slide in with the latest now from the Senate floor. And you see Chuck Schumer there, too. So apparently he is going to stand up every time a new group comes. And, we'll see if we see this
Please raise your right hand.
Each time. But let's watch and listen.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? That you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same? That you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion? And that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations, Senator.
Congratulations, Senator. All right, so what we've just seen there is one of the swearings in. We wanted you to see what happens on the Senate floor. These are the people who work for us. You see Hirono